We find ourselves in an age where the very essence of what it means to be human is under siege. Whereas our ancestors viewed themselves as the children of God, and as gods themselves, yet our leaders and scholars have reduced us to mere animals with a conscience. Subjective relativism and modernity, with its relentless worship of materialism, money, and gain, have sold us these narcissistic tendencies as virtue. In a short time, it has turned Western civilization into a series of transactions and contracts, losses and gains, slowly stripping away the sacred, the profound, and the powerful. This current dystopian era that celebrates this cosmopolitan capitalist culture reduces nations and peoples to mere economic zones and fosters the flame of pride and arrogance in order to keep our minds and hearts on ourselves instead of the service and the love of others. An attitude so foreign to our people, it could not have come from our people, but rather from a subversive class that seeks to tear up the deep roots of our identities and would have us forget the legacies and inheritance passed down to us from our ancestors. We are incentivized on every front in this spiritual battle to do what feels good in the moment, to act on every whim of passion that our mortal bodies dictate, to become passive, undisciplined, and domesticated slaves whose purpose is only to pay tribute to a machine that seeks only its own glory and its own gain. It is actively opposed to us working by the sweat of our own brow, to till our own land under the direction of divine providence, together with our wives, our children, and extended friends and family. We currently live in a time where every people, kindred, tongue, and nation are diluted into a bland and soulless global culture with no unique qualities, traits, or characteristics. We are bombarded with degeneracy, where the sacred bonds of family, community, and nation are severed by the forces of this subversive class that profit from our wickedness and our slavery. The internal self-hatred sown into our young children, especially young males of European descent, is so thick and perverse that they are okay with their lands, women, and culture at risk of being erased forever, so long as it happens quote-unquote legally. And any feeling they have in opposing this erasure is met with gaslighting, shame, and guilt from the subversive class, who claim that these sentiments come from a place of toxicity, superiority, and genocidal fantasies. Immigration, which used to be used as a means to enrich people and nations of a common background, ancestry, myth, and story, helping to unify and bind a people together through this common heritage, is now used as a tool to do just the opposite, to disintegrate all cultural distinctions that make a people and a nation what and who they are. From a young age, our children are subject to the most gross pornography and disgusting immorality. And even worse, this is done under the banner of free agency and a free market, insomuch that the evil forces that seek to degrade our spirits is upheld by the very men who should be sworn to oppose it. The dark forces of atheism and secularism have cut us off from the power of God, and are ideological weapons in the hands of those who wish to dismantle our heritage and connection to the other side. I say all this not as a black pill or a negative hopelessness, but in hopes of correctly identifying and diagnosing the state of our people and our nations, in hopes of finding solutions together and moving towards the light at the end of the tunnel. These issues and existential threats are the reasons I have begun to make content. I feel I needed to do something to try to improve the situation of our people. The purpose of this video specifically is to provide the focus on how you're going to get the most out of my videos and articles, and let you in on my worldview and my system for processing information. I pray to God that I'll have the spirit to correctly convey to you the ideas that are pressing upon my mind, and also that my viewers will directly benefit from those ideas. Despite the onslaught of attacks by our common enemy, I feel a greater confidence and power that I feel is descending on our people than ever before, and a power that we haven't experienced since the early ages of man. It is in the past and in the ways of our ancestors in which I seek to find the wisdom to navigate our future, accompanied by a direct and personal revelation from our Creator and a resurrection of our ancient identity. God has warned that unless we turn our hearts back to our fathers, that those same fathers will not turn their hearts to us, to impart with us the power and endowment of God needed in these last days, to stand as witnesses of righteousness. The result of not heeding this warning from God would be a world utterly wasted at the advent of Christ's second coming, so I cannot stress enough the importance of understanding your family history. Remembering the ways of the ancients and seeking them out is a prerequisite to obtaining the power of God. They have a duty to steer their posterity towards God, and they need us to perform sacred rituals to help them further down the path of their eternal progression. Therefore, they cannot be made perfect without us, and we cannot be made perfect without them. We are a family of gods, and we either fall or are exalted together. This subversive class of parasitic vampires has done everything it can to the European peoples to get them to go to war with each other. They promote conflict between brother peoples. Yet in my dreams, I envision our various cultures as single threads making up a vibrant tapestry, woven from countless actions of greatness and varied sub-origins of a leading common origin of a people chosen by God, and blessed with a royal ancestry that make up those who we know today as the Indo-European peoples. Take a moment to think of the Danube River and the Volga River, veins of life that do not separate various cultures but rather seal these lands or the soil of Europe together. Each one of us should be considered as one of these veins carrying this blood, as to bind European culture and the worldwide European diaspora together, in this life and in the world to come. This great and ancient blood flows through us, from the Romans, whose laws of civilization form the bedrock of our legal system, to the Norse, whose tales of gods and seers and sacred groves teach each of us that the Spirit of God is within us, teaching us how to interact with those of this world and in the world to come. These concepts are meant to stir the wonder in our souls. We have thanks to the Greeks, whose philosophical inquiries shape our understanding of the world and give us the tools to use our comparative faculties to measure ideas and metaphysical concepts. We don't forget the pain and the triumph of the Slavs, nor the megalithic monuments of the Celts. And remember that all of these great features and more live on in you. Their memories exist in your blood. Their blood is your blood. Their lives are your lives. Their memories are your memories. Each culture that developed and flowed into this river, which is the history and the legacy of the Indo-European people, has added to and has become our collective narrative, showing that our identity is not singular, trivial stories to be forgotten, but a confluence of literal legends, ideas, and myths, which sow in our heart the strength of honor and power, God-given humility, elegance, righteousness, grace, love, virtue, brotherly kindness, and service to our fellow man. Our collective identity teaches us that we are not merely the inheritors of one tradition, but of many, where the wisdom of Thor's hammer meets the justice of Roman law, or where the art of Da Vinci dances with the sagas of the Vikings. This understanding is not just about history. It's about recognizing that our common strength lies in our distinct but common heritage, each a part in this full tapestry of the European experience and their impact on the world, and that of the other children of God. These ideas and peoples which have shaped Europe are the same of that which has shaped the world. We are those who are destined to climb Mount Olympus, to unite those still under the influence of the Tower of Babel, and to restore an Adamic language. We are those who see not just the immediate, but the entire saga of human history, and how to be examples and leaders for the glory and power of our Father in heaven, and to give light to all of his other children. From the epic of Beowulf to the tale of Achilles, these heroic ideals are those of your people and continue on in your blood. All of us, every person, every character, every event, contributes to a narrative much larger than itself. For Europeans, this means seeing our history as a grand and interconnected story, where the fall of Rome leads to the rise of the Holy Roman Empire, where the Norse voyages inspire the Age of Exploration, and where the Renaissance rekindles the wisdom of antiquity. It's understanding even how the Christianization of Europe didn't erase, but rather integrated our pagan elements and created a new spiritual culture. This oneness is prevalent in all European blood. Even the enmity between pagans and Christians dissipates when considering this worldview. You then begin to see that even our pre-Christian heritage is reflected in Christianity, and with the resurrection of Christ himself. For years before the birth of Jesus Christ, our ancestors told their children stories of Baldur's death and resurrection, his ultimate sacrifice for all of mankind. These beautiful legends don't conflict with the Christian narrative, but rather are parallels within it. By divine providence, our ancestors prophesied, foreshadowed, and predicted the coming of Christ centuries before the birth and death of Jesus Christ himself. Yet still this subversive class has sought to divide pagans and Christians as enemies and have instigated and funded wars for at least the last 2 millennia, when in reality our religions are literally one and of the same. Despite the attempt to cut us down, our people are like a great oak tree. It may spring forth new leaves, and the wind may carry its seeds across the field, yet it is always rooted in the same soil. Christianity is European, and paganism is Christianity. Yule became Christmas, Easter was born from Ostara's festival, illustrating how our pagan roots were not discarded but rather incorporated into a restored faith, which had at a time beforehand been subverted and forgotten, but lived on in the memories of our blood all the same. This blending wasn't about loss, but about true and sincere enrichment, showing us how to adapt and to grow, to remind us again of who we are. The cycles of time have taught our people resilience, an art form of weaving old and new into something beautiful and ancient, reborn to remind us that our spiritual journey is a straight path that spirals within and without, returning to its origins time and time again to find new meaning. This narrative invites us to look beyond the surface, to see how every myth, every historical figure, every piece of art or literature has been a part of our ongoing story leading up to the long-awaited Battle of Armageddon, or to what the Norse called Ragnarok. We were chosen by our ancestors and by God to live in and during the most climactic time in the history of all of humankind. We are generals in God's army and destined to gather the elect from the four quarters of the earth, which will end in the great and final battle where a new earth will be made and humanity will begin again, with Asker and Embla, or a new Adam and Eve. You see, man's history and time was never meant to be seen as progressing linear from a starting point, but as a cycle, as the dance of the seasons, where winter's end does not obliterate spring, but rather births it. The concepts of a cyclic time and these deep roots are reflected over and over again in various cultures, and make its greatest appearance in the Tree of Life, in which the Norse called Yggdrasil. This illustration serves as connecting different realms and cultures, but also bridging the past with the future. We see this in the Legend of Merlin, using ancient lore and myths to guide Arthur towards restoring the Britannic people into a new era. For the European spirit, our future lies in its roots and history, taking the lessons of our ancestors to grow great branches. In our day, we have been chosen by fate and destiny to harness the great power of modern technology combined with the stewardship of nature. We should not go about rejecting technology, but rather integrating it within respects to our cultural heritage and the natural world. I imagine a future where our myths inspire our technology, where the ethics of chivalry guide artificial intelligence and the modes of our algorithms, and where the reverence for the natural world influences our architecture and is seen as evidence of our uplifting worldviews. In my mind, this clear vision stands as the means in which we safeguard ourselves against the soulless progression of modernity, without rejecting the positive attributes of technology, as well as offering a path where our culture is preserved in all its ethical concepts and deep-rooted history. I dream of a future where the wisdom of the past lights the way for the innovations of the future. The restoration of our tribes is necessary in the rejection of the subversive principles of universalism, a foreign concept that eats at the very story of Europa and her children. Europeans must remember their own tales, traditions, and unique qualities while yet feeling unified as branches of the same legacy. Tribalism is not evil, and is not a tentacle of the so-called self-declared identity politics. It is the blood and soil of a people, in whom the genetic memories of the past are delineated to father and son. This means celebrating our regional stories, understanding that each adds to the destiny and fate of Europe and her diaspora of children throughout the entire world. Our power flows from God, through our ancestors, and then passed to us and gives us the right and privilege to band together while honoring our individual heritages. Tribalism teaches us about community, about belonging, about how each of us, with our unique choices and actions, create the cultural threads used by the Norns to weave our lives into the broader European history. Each nation has a duty to homogenize and collectivize, realizing the power in their unique differences, as well as remembering our common connection to the land, to each other, and to the stories that have been passed down that bonded our people for generations. One might ask, why does all this matter? And the answer is because to misunderstand our ancestors and our people is to disgustingly misunderstand ourselves, which in turn causes us to misinterpret reality. By forgetting the fabric that makes up our identity, our history, our future, we become weak in the face of this evil and subversive class, or the Church of the Adversary, or Synagogue of Satan, which relies heavily on us forgetting who we are so they can maintain their power and wield their influence over our present, allowing the vampires to use us as slaves like cattle. This isn't just about knowing history, it's about feeling part of it, about connecting with the primal forces of nature and God that have moved through the European man since the dawn of time. The purpose of my content is to remind you of who you are, where you came from, and give hope for the direction we are headed as a collective and united people of the European diaspora. I wish to arm our people with the knowledge of God and our true history, the true history of our planet and the affairs of the children of God upon and within it. My hope is that you'll use this video to serve as the medium, lens, and worldview in which to consider my content. I want to show and promote our collective grand destiny, bound together by land, spirit, blood, fate, destiny, and Almighty God. My goal is to teach that European history is world history, and as a European, your history. Every chapter of Europa's recorded history and actions has made, is making, and will yet make the world what it was, is, and will yet determine world history throughout all generations of time and throughout all eternity. I want Christianity to stop erasing our so-called heathen past, but rather restore it and give it a new life in the context of the restored gospel, and for heathens to remember the henotheistic worldview of our ancestors by not rejecting the Most High God and His Son. And together, we will watch the European man rise like a phoenix from its ashes. The future we build will be the restoration of the old ways, with modern technology, where the universal principle of man is tribalism, a culture of gods under the direction of the All-Father of men, and His Son, the Christ, bound by the rituals and oaths given to us through His ordained servants. Thank you for considering my views and ideas, and I hope to continue this journey together where we explore, learn, and grow together. I hope these things have resonated with you and with the spirit of Europa, and where we gather to honor our past, engage with our present, and dream of a future as powerful as our history. Together we can reclaim our identity, our culture, and our souls from the grasp of modernity, degeneracy, and the influence of the subversive parasites, ensuring that we do not just survive the impending death and rebirth of civilization, but rather thrive through it, guided by the wisdom of our ancestors and under the protection from Almighty God. If any words I have said intrigued your thoughts or provoked your feelings, consider subscribing to my socials through the link below. Thank you.